Welcome to Freedom's Foundation. I am the Constitution guy, and after my last video about the Commerce Clause, somebody emailed me and said, okay, but when the founders gave Congress the power to regulate commerce, that didn't mean to control it, it meant to facilitate it, right? That's a good point. And to find the answer to that, let's start by taking a look at why the founders would give Congress the power to regulate commerce in the first place. Just to review, the Commerce Clause says that Congress has the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states. Now, if we're going to interpret the Constitution properly, we always have to understand what the founders were trying to accomplish with each individual clause. That's just common sense because each clause is more than just words on paper. There's an intent and a purpose behind every single one of them. And the founders really weren't in the business of just handing random powers over to Congress because it felt good. I mean, it's not like they were sitting in the Constitutional Convention one day and somebody stood up and said, hey, how about we give Congress the power to regulate commerce, huh? And they all just sort of looked at each other and went, psh, why not? No, that's not what happened here. When the founders gave this power to Congress, they were trying to accomplish something very specific. So if we're going to figure out exactly what Congress is authorized to do under the Commerce Clause, the first thing we need to do is ask ourselves, what's the purpose of this clause? What are we really trying to accomplish here? And to find the answer to that, we're actually going to jump to another section of the Constitution for just a second. Now, if you look at Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, it says that the states are prohibited from putting tariffs or taxes on things that it imports or exports. So if a state brings a product in, it imports it from another state, they're not allowed to put a tariff on that. And let me illustrate that really quickly with my Illinois and Wisconsin example here. If Illinois imports this lawnmower from Wisconsin, they're not allowed to put a tax on that lawnmower as it enters the state. And at the same time, Wisconsin isn't allowed to put a tax on that lawnmower as it leaves the state. And there are two reasons for that. One reason was to make sure that products could move easily from state to state so that we could have a strong economy. Look at it this way. Let's say that there's a product that's produced in Georgia, and it's going to get shipped to New Hampshire. But as it's on its way, South Carolina puts a tax on it, and then North Carolina, and then Virginia, and Maryland, and on and on and on. By the time that thing finally gets to New Hampshire, it's going to cost a fortune. Not to mention the fact that you got to go through stopping in every state and paying the tax and going through all that hassle. I mean, that's all going to make doing business in this country basically impossible. So one of the things the founders were trying to accomplish by keeping states from putting those tariffs on each other was to make sure that products could move easily from one state to the next. The other reason is to make sure that states aren't getting into trade wars with each other. To illustrate that, we'll go back to our Illinois and Wisconsin example. Let's say that Illinois is just sick and tired of Wisconsin sending all their lawnmowers into Illinois. So what Illinois does is they decide they're going to put a tariff on everything that comes into Illinois from Wisconsin. Well, Wisconsin just thought that was out of line, so they put an even higher tariff on everything that comes into Wisconsin from Illinois. Well, that's just a slap in the face. So Illinois has to put more barriers on the stuff that comes into Illinois from Wisconsin. And it goes back and forth and back and forth. Well, that kind of friction between two states only serves to weaken our union. Not to mention the fact that trade wars have a tendency to turn into real wars. And we just can't afford to have two states fighting each other if we want to have a stable country. If we want to have a strong economy in this country, we have to have a free market among the states where products can move quickly and easily from one state to the next. So, and this is where we get back to the Commerce Clause. What the Commerce Clause means is that Congress has the authority to facilitate that flow of products and to make sure that it doesn't get interrupted or interfered with. So when the Constitution says that Congress has the power to regulate commerce among the several states, that doesn't mean that it can control commerce or mandate it or micromanage it or anything else like that. It simply means that Congress has the power to facilitate the flow of products and other commerce from one state to another. That's it. Pretty simple, isn't it? This is probably quite a bit different from what you're used to hearing about the Commerce Clause. But in my next video, I will show you how this interpretation of the Commerce Clause fits in better with the overall purpose of the Constitution and how it protects your freedom better too.